Jungle podcast. If you're new here, hello, my name is Sarah. This is my 9th episode, and this is a podcast where I talk about everything that I've been knitting on. I do hand knitting, machine knitting, and also sometimes crochet and sewing. So if that sounds good to you, I've got a lot to share today, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. I've got my coffee here. It's finally very cold here, and by very cold I mean upper 40s, not too bad at all, but my hands are frozen. And I've mentioned before, I live in a house that was built in 1895, and this particular room has pretty much no insulation, I think, so it's very drafty and cold, but not to worry, I've got my warm slippers on and a nice hot cup of coffee. So if you'd also like to settle in with your knitting and a nice hot beverage and join me today, that would be great. I love to have you here. Also, thank you so much to everyone who watched my last video and even left a comment. I love to read all the comments and see what you're working on and what part of the world you're from. And sometimes I add some of your projects into my project list, so thanks so much for that. My last episode was very finished object heavy, and today's episode will be very whip heavy. I do have one finished object, one hand knitting finished object, 2 machine knitting finished objects, and then I also have a couple of sewing projects that I finished, including the dress I'm wearing today. This is the Clara Dress by Silver Saga Patterns. It's a beautiful cottagecore type of dress, and I made it in this dark green floral cotton fabric. And this is just my ultimate color scheme. I just love green, it's my favorite color. And I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of the episode in case some people aren't as interested in sewing. I'll save all my sewing projects for the end. But let's get started with my hand knitted finished object. So this is my finished object. It's a hat, as you can see. I think this is the first hat I've ever made, and it went by really fast. I think I just finished this in 2 days, and it's supposed to be 2 polar bears and a little pine tree or Christmas tree of some sort, and some little snowflakes and a snowy cloud at the top maybe. From far away, on camera, it definitely does look like polar bears, but up close, I kind of thought they looked more like megafauna, like a prehistoric beast. You know, that giant ground sloth that used to exist? I thought these things kind of looked like that. But I made this for my husband, and he said, yeah, they look like polar bears. So either way, it's very cute, and the pattern is repeated on the front and back. There's a lot of long floats, so if you don't like long floats, maybe this isn't the best pattern for you, but I think it's pretty simple and effective. And I used, what yarn did I use? Oh, I used my leftover yarn from I had a sweater in my last episode, and it was by Hedgehog. It was their Luna base, and it's a 100% lamb's wool yarn, and it's a worsted weight and super soft. I knit this on either 3.5 or 4 millimeter needles, I can't remember now. And the pattern I found on Etsy. I will link it below. And I always put links to all the yarn and patterns that I'm talking about below, so you don't have to go searching. You can just go down there and click on it if you're interested in learning more. And oh, you know what? I'm not actually done because I wanted to add a pom-pom to the top, but I don't have a pom-pom maker. And I thought I could just use a piece of cardboard and wrap the yarn that way and make a pom-pom. But I haven't made it yet because it hasn't been quite cold enough for hat weather, so I thought I've got a couple more weeks to put that off. The colors I used I will put up on screen, but it's white and a beautiful warm golden brown type of color. And these are some of my favorite colors. And I might be stealing this hat. So you knit this from the bottom up, 1 by 1 ribbing, and then you start decreasing after the polar bear section ends, the polar bear section of the chart. And then there's another chart for this little snowflake design. And at the very end, you just loop your yarn through however many remaining stitches there are and just tug it tight in it and put a few stitches right on top, and I think I closed it up pretty well there. So yeah, nothing too exciting, but I'm glad to have at least one hat made. We do have hats, but I didn't start knitting until February of last year. Well, I had taught myself to knit when I was a teenager, but I've been pretty much only crocheting and sewing since then. I didn't really get into knitting until last year. So anyways, we do have hats, but they're probably cotton or polyester, and so I definitely want to try to replace all of the family's hats with some nice, warm, 100% wool hats. So here's the first start to that project. And in case anybody's interested, this is what the inside looks like. I think I did a pretty good job carrying floats. I think maybe my longest float is maybe 3 or 4 stitches long. You don't really need to catch floats that often in a hat, I think, because you're not sticking your fingers in there and nothing's really getting caught, unless you have bobby pins or something in your hair. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. So I will save my other finished objects from my machine knitting until after the whole hand knitting section, in case you're not interested in that. So I will move right on to whips. And this is my ultimate whip. Oh my gosh, it just looks so good. This might be my favorite sweater of all time. I know I say that probably a lot, but I really do mean it this time. This is the Agnes Kofte by Kristin Viola Odegaard, and she's a Norwegian knitwear designer, and she has the most amazing colorwork design. The pattern for this is from her book 1 Year with Viola Cardigans or something like that. The book is in English, and it comes with at least 12 sweater designs, and I think a cowl, or like not a face mask, but neck warmer tube, and maybe some hand warmers. There's even more designs than just sweater designs in there, in case you're interested. If you want the individual pattern, she does sell them, but they're in Norwegian. So if you want them in English, you have to buy the whole book, just to let you know. So this one, oh, I said it already, but this is the Agnes Kofte Light. She also has a dark version in, I guess, darker colors. I haven't looked too closely at that one, but I decided to make this one because Corinne from the Woolly Thistle just recently finished hers, and it looks so amazing, and I already had Kristin Viola's book, so I immediately got yarn for that and cast on as soon as I could. Also, other Sarah from Fiber Trek, she's knitting the Agnes dark version, and there's another person knitting with cat hair. She's got another YouTube channel, and she is also making the Agnes. I think she recently made a swatch for it on her latest episode, and she wasn't too happy with the colors, or I think maybe she's still working out what colors she wants to use. But definitely check those 2 YouTube channels out if you're interested in even more people making this pattern. It seems to be very popular right now. So when I went on Ravelry, this is a little bit blasphemous, but I'm not making this in Rama Fino, which is a Norwegian wool that is absolutely perfect for Kristin Viola's designs. But I went on Ravelry, and on the project pages I saw somebody, I'll put a little screenshot of her project and her name, because she gets full credit for this, but she made the most beautiful version of this in Knitting for Olive merino and silk mohair held together. And I usually use very rustic wools, non-superwash of course, and I thought I would just love to have a very fuzzy, super duper soft sweater in my wardrobe. So I decided to go against what makes sense and make it in Knitting for Olive, merino and mohair. And I have no regrets. It's so soft and so fuzzy. And I copied exactly every color that this Ravelry person used in her pattern, because she is probably a master of color and some type of color genius, because this looks so good. So I'm making the third size in this. I think she calls it size large. And I've got a 36-inch bust, and when I try it on, I do have a little bit of positive ease. It's not skin tight for sure, and it's not super loose. So I'm really liking the fit. And since it's a yoke design, if you make too small of a yoke pattern, sometimes it can ride up on your neck, at least for my body it seems to. So I always tend to err on the side of a little bit oversized for a yoke pattern. I don't know if that is what you should do or not, but that seems to work for me. And I'm making this on 3.5mm needles. It's knitted top down, so you start at the ribbing here at the neckline, and you do some German short rows to increase the height of the back so that the back sits higher and then the front sits a little bit lower and it's not choking your neck too much. And then after you do that, you just go straight into the Colorwork chart. And it's very, very good instructions. They're minimal, so it's maybe not beginner friendly, but it makes perfect sense to me, and it's nice and succinct in its instructions. And I haven't had any issues with the pattern or any of her patterns, and I think she's a great designer, so I highly recommend her. So once you finish the yoke pattern, and the yoke pattern went by really fast for me because it was very addicting. I always wanted to see which color was coming up next. And when you finish the yoke pattern, then you split for sleeves, and you cast on some amount of stitches in the underarm area, and then you knit the rest of the body in the round, and then later on you can do the sleeves or whatever order you want to do. I think she wants you to knit one of the sleeves first, but I just continued to the body because I don't like knitting sleeves. One thing I did mess up on the color chart is up here. See this very top area here? I accidentally included, you know when in the Colorwork chart there's a final stitch that you're only supposed to do at the very end of the round so that the pattern is a perfect mirror image from left to right in the center front? Well, I included that extra stitch in every pattern repeat that I did by accident. So you can see that very top one is a little bit wider than what it's supposed to be, which is down here. It's not a big deal, to me at least. I feel very sorry to the designer for making such an error, but I didn't notice it until about this section down here, and I wasn't about to go back and fix it because I think it looks fine. And I think that's the only mistake I did so far. Oh, I forgot to mention also, this is going to be a cardigan. So after you finish the neckline ribbing, you cast on 5 or 7 stitches that are going to be steeked later. I think she wants you to cast on 7, but I do 5 because I feel like in my previous steeked cardigans I didn't need all 7 stitches, and if I saved 2 stitches per round for like 300 rounds, that's a lot of stitches saved. So that's just a little shortcut I like to take. Can't really see the steek line until you get here, but here it is, and I'll be cutting it on the white part. So yesterday I finished the body and I started the ribbing. There's going to be 4 centimeters of 1x1 ribbing here. So I'm really close to being done. And the reason why I'm so close to being done is because I did the sleeves on the machine. Whoa! So, you know, I hate to do sleeves, and as I was knitting the body, I was like, this would be really good if I could do the sleeves on the machine. So I took some scrap yarn. This is the exact yarn I used, just extra colors, and I put this in the machine as a swatch gauge test, and I put my machine at the loosest setting and it matched gauge perfectly. So I went ahead and put all the sleeve stitches, as many as I could fit, on the machine. You hang each stitch on one needle of the machine, and since you have to try to make a circular sleeve head into a piece of flat knitting on the machine, there were several stitches down here, maybe like 30, maybe even more, that I couldn't stretch far enough to make them flat, because it was a circle. There's no way I could get all of those stitches flat on the machine. So I just cast on more stitches on either side of the machine until it equals the exact number of stitches the sleeve was supposed to be. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'll just include that in there anyways, just in case. And I didn't make any adjustments to the sleeve length. And you do a decrease every 6 rounds, I think. And then when I got here, I took it off the machine, took the live stitches off and put them on a needle, a 3mm needle for the ribbing, and then just 4 centimeters of 1x1 rib here. So I'm really happy with how the sleeve turned out. And so yes, the sleeve was knitted flat, and then I seamed it up in the middle here. It's pretty good. Not too lumpy. The pattern doesn't match when you're decreasing, but that's okay. No one's gonna see that. And one interesting thing about the machine is that the mohair is kind of sucked into the fabric now. I think when the yarn is getting run through the machine, it kind of is compressed or something, so that by the time it pops out, the yarn is very compressed and stiff. And when you're hand knitting, it's a lot looser and fuzzier. So this is the hand knitted section. Maybe you can see how fuzzy it is. And then this is the sleeve, the machine knit section. I don't know if you can tell, but I can tell in person. And I was concerned about this because I didn't want them to look that different. Let me hold them up side by side. Well, I'm glad that it's not too obvious, but I started on the sleeve, I just started pulling out the mohairs back out, and that seemed to have done the trick. And I took a vacuum and I suctioned this section here to see if that would draw the mohairs back out, and that also worked a little bit. So I think after washing, blocking, soaking everything, and then I can just pull the mohairs out manually if it really bugs me, or just with use, I'm sure the mohairs are gonna pop out. So anyways, I think it will all resolve itself in the end, but just something to keep in mind if you are doing that. I also steam the sleeve a bit to soften it up, because when it goes through the machine, like I said, it gets really compressed and doesn't feel as soft as the finished product when you're hand knitting, but after I steamed it, it became just as soft, so that fixed that, so that's good. And then the other sleeve is a good example. I just recently took this off the machine, and then the live stitches are on this 3mm needle, and then I just need to do the ribbing on here, and then this sleeve will be all done. So let me show you the yarn colors here, because all of these colors seem to be my favorite colors of all time. And the person who created this color combo is an absolute genius. I'm just so in love with the yoke part of this cardigan. So the background color, like I mentioned, oh wow, this looks nothing like, okay, turning out a little bit brighter on camera. This is the merino. It's at least a fingering weight. It's very thin. This is called dark ochre, and they don't have a matching merino yarn for dark ochre, so I went with ochre brown here. And actually the combo of these two together gives it this beautiful kind of antique brass, or antique gold, or aged brass kind of color, and I just love it so much. It's neither brown nor green, and it's always changing in the light. And so that was kind of a happy, not accident, but a happy thing to have happened, that they don't have the same colors in these, because I just love these two together. So this is the background color. I don't have the whitish color on hand. Of course, in the pattern it just looks white, but it's actually a very dingy dark white called marzipan. And this white kind of reminds me of when you wash your white laundry with colored clothes by accident and it becomes dingy. It's that type of dingy white. And I think not having a stark white really adds to the moodiness and dark academia vibes of this sweater. Another color in here is called Dusty Honey, and it's kind of a muted yellow color, kind of a very pale gold. And let's see, where do you find this color? Right here, right near this pink section. One of my favorite sections, by the way, is right here where this dark reddish brown color meets this paler pinkish color. I of course like all the sections, but here you can see that. Okay, another color which is kind of fun to throw in there, I think this is called Dusty Artichoke. And it's a pale, this looks kind of blue on camera, but it's definitely a muted green color in real life. And that is kind of an accent color. You barely need any of this. You don't really need to buy a full ball of yarn for this. It's only right here and then right here in the very center of this red circular thing. So hardly any of that at all. But of course it does really add to the overall look. So there are a few rosy, pinkish reddy colors. This one's called Plum Rose. This is the merino and the mohair. They come in the same color. The lightest shade required is called Rose Clay, and it's a very muted kind of pink. Almost doesn't look pink, kind of looks like, oh, this is a really accurate representation, kind of a brownish pink. But once you mix it all together, it does kind of look like pink once you have it up there with all the other colors. But if you don't like pink, I think this is a nice understated pink type of shade. This one is called Brown Nougat, so it's kind of something in between that rose clay and the plum rose color. It's also definitely more of a pink than a brown. Although I guess it's kind of somewhere in between pink and brown. I'm not too good at describing colors, but here you go. Ooh, this is one of my favorite color combinations. This one is Rust. It's a lot darker than what it looks like on camera. Let me see. Yeah, it kind of looks like this. Ooh, there we go. So yeah, this is Rust. Looks exactly like Rust to me, a very rich red. Not a true red for sure, but more of a brownish red. And that looks really good, mixed in with the pinks and then with all those ochre kind of colors. I think that looks really cool. Okay, I think that's all the colors, and I did find a teeny bit left of that marzipan color. Of course, you're not going to be able to tell that it's a dingy white. Oh, maybe you can. So I think that's all I've got left of this, so that's nice. Just a nice small little amount of scraps there. So what else can I say about this, my ultimate sweater? Every time I finish knitting with it at the end of the night before bed, I just take a few minutes to kind of touch it and admire it, and it just brings a smile to my face. Do you ever have a project that you're working on and just makes you so happy that you are actually smiling when you look at it? That's exactly what this sweater gives me, and I can't wait to wear it. I'm probably never gonna take it off. I think this might be my Thanksgiving outfit. It's definitely a special occasion kind of sweater, although I'm sure I'm gonna wear it like almost every day. Oh, and for the buttons, I got some on Etsy. I found some gold velvet buttons. I think they're supposed to get here tomorrow, and I hope it's a match, because this brownish color is very hard to match. And if it doesn't match, I think I'm gonna have to make my own buttons. I've got a button press, and I think what I would do is I would knit up some fabric on my machine as tight of setting as I can get, and then cut out circles for the button maker, fabric circle, yeah, for the button maker, and try to make buttons that way. I really don't want to have to do that though, so let's hope that these buttons are a good enough match. Oh yes, that's all I have to say about this. I bet I will have this finished by next time, as long as I got the button situation all sorted out. Okay, so I'm on to my next whip, And this is a Christmas stocking. I know, I don't think it's too early. If it's past November 1st, I think it's acceptable to start Christmas knitting because you only get to do Christmas knitting once per year. So you need to have it last as long as possible. So if you follow Arna and Carlos, their YouTube channel I also love, they are doing another Christmas stocking knit along this year, and it's totally free up until December 1st. And what you do is you knit the toe one day, and then they release 6 rows of the color chart every day between November 1st and I think November 25th or so it ends. And it's really fun. And so I cast on as soon as they released the toe part of the pattern. And then something happened where I just couldn't stop, and I saw immediately that I wasn't going to be able to restrict myself to 6 rows every day because I've never made a sock or a Christmas stock or anything like that before. And I was just getting too excited, so I did what any normal person would do, which is I went on their website and just got the 2023 stocking of theirs. I think all their stockings are on sale right now, the patterns I mean, for $2.30 or something. It's definitely under $3, so if you're interested, I would try to get one of their old patterns if you can't wait, or do the knit along if you want. Low pressure, 6 rows per day is very manageable, I think. So anyways, I'm doing the 2023 version of the stocking, and I'm pretty sure I will also make this year's version as well because I've got 2 kids and one of them wants this one already, so the other one can get the other one. This is meant to be a scrappy project, so the green I'm using is Marie Wallen's Aran yarn, and I used that in a sweater I made a few episodes ago from her Aran book. I think it's the Seton sweater. That's where I use this green yarn, and it's called Dark Apple. It's very beautiful, not a solid green color. There's definitely other yellowish flecks in there. The red I'm using is Sedness Garn Peer Gynt in 4228 red. I just happen to remember that number for some reason. And that's a worsted weight. I think all these are about worsted weight. This one I guess is Aran weight because it's called Aran. But I think it's a forgiving, scrappy project. I'm not too worried about yarn weights not matching up. And then the white is 2 balls of Rauma Fino held together to try to make a thicker yarn there. This is just all different scraps I had in my stash. It's going very well. I'm making this on 3.5mm needles, yep. And one thing I'm doing, because this is a fun scrappy project, is I'm trying to experiment with using purl bumps in my color work. And I think I understand how it works now. If you want a certain bump of purl, you have to purl the row after you want that bump. So this white purl bump, for example, exists because in the next row I purled a red. I don't know if that makes any sense, but something cool I'm trying out. I also have this glitter thread from, where's it from? I think it's from Drops Makes It on lindahobby.com. You can find the Peer Gynt yarn and this glitter thread, and I kind of forgot to use it in this red section, so I have to remember to put that in the rest of the pattern because kids like glitter, so I'm going to add glitter to the stocking. So yeah, I've never made socks before. This one is obviously going to be toe up, and I think this is a good introduction to making socks. What do you think? Have you made socks before? Is making a giant stocking kind of going to make it easier to make socks in the future? Let me know in the comments if this is a good practice project for someone who's interested in making socks in the future. I think that's all I have to say about this. Okay, I have one more whip. It's barely started, but I guess it still counts. Before I get into my machine knitting and my sewing projects. Oh, I just realized this is a crochet project. Sorry. So when I crochet, I like to make little toys, and my favorite designer for that is called Sans Popkes. I think her name is Sonia something, sorry, I'm not sure. And I've made several of her patterns before, and they always turn out so cute. They're very short-term projects, so when you're making a big sweater or something and you need a little break, I just like to take a break by making a little toy, mostly for myself, but sometimes my kids like it too. But it's not really for them. Sometimes they do steal it though. This one is her Hedgehog pattern, and so far I have completed the head minus the eyes. So these are just little markers for where I'm going to put some safety eyes in. And I was supposed to be making this for my brother who used to have a pet hedgehog, and these are going to be the exact colors of the original hedgehog. But then one of my daughters saw that I was making this, and so I'll probably have to make 3 of these, one for each person. This is very easy. You can just make this little head in like 30 minutes. And then what's going to happen is you make the body separately and then sew them together. And for the body, there's a new stitch you have to do that I don't know how to do it yet. I think there's a video tutorial. But it's a way to make all the spikes on the hedgehog. And I've been too lazy to learn how to do that new stitch, so I didn't start the body yet. I'm making this out of Let Lopi. I make all of my little crochet toys out of this yarn because it's really sturdy, rustic, cheap, Icelandic wool. Usually I find this wool super scratchy, but these 2 colors, maybe they are not dyed as much, but they're really soft. I think white is probably their softest color, and I'm guessing it might be close to the natural shade of the sheep, and that's why it's so soft. Because I have red and black yarn, and those are by far the itchiest colors, but these 2 colors are really nice. If I can find these, I've probably had these balls for years. Like, no joke, maybe 5 years. So I don't know which colors they are. The ball bands are long gone. But yes, it's just a mottled light beigey brown color, and then whatever regular white, natural white color. That's what I'm going to be making it out of. I made this head last week and I already forgot, but I was holding those Let Lopi yarns double with mohair, because now I've got a lot of mohair in my stash. So this one is Isair silk mohair, and this one I think is Drops silk mohair. These are old yarns I used for my sweater from last episode. So happy to use some stash yarns for that project. Not much more to say about that, other than if you're looking into getting into crocheting toys, I highly recommend Sans Popkes for that. It's very easy to follow. She puts tons of pictures in there, and there's a lot of projects on Ravelry. She's really popular. So yeah, if you're getting into that, maybe Christmas giving, you have some kids around or something, it's a great place to start with crochet if you're interested in learning. Okay, I just had to go grab my next finished objects from my girls' room that they share. So this I made on the knitting machine. I made 2 really big scarves or little lap blankets from some stash Drops alpaca yarn that I was gonna make them sweaters out of, but I'm not. Let's be real, I'm not gonna do that anymore. So instead, I just made them some nice little blankets. And I used the Fair Isle option on the knitting machine, and I used a 1x1 punch card. And sometimes I did the 1x1, for example, right here. And then in other sections, I put it in hold mode, and that's right here. And hold mode means it knits each row twice before moving on to the next row. And then in other sections, I just paused the punch card. And that means you just pause it on one orientation. And for a 1x1 alternating design, that means it will just knit lines. Again, I don't know if I make any sense when I explain these things, but that is my best attempt. So one of my girls loves pink, and the other one loves blue. So I made one in each color scheme, very similar. I made them basically exactly the same with the punch cards. Oh, is that a mistake here? Oh yeah, so I tried to do, there's one punch card I have that came with my machine. My machine is the Silver Reed SK280, by the way. Oh, the colors are going crazy. Sorry. Let me move that pink out of the way. Okay, that's a little better. So my machine came with a snowflake punch card, but the floats were so long that my machine was dropping stitches. So after a couple rows I said, forget it. Let's just go back to the 1x1 punch card that was working out, and my daughter said that she was okay with that. So I cast on 160 stitches for this project, and the row count at the end was I think 185 or so. So quite a bit of knitting. Maybe it's 3.5 feet long. And it took me 2 hours per blanket scarf thing. So not bad at all. And they're really happy with it. They sleep with it at night. And oh, another annoying thing is the curled edges. Now I know how to make the edges not curl on the machine. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube. You have to do some stitch transfers on either side every single round. And I wasn't going to do that 185 times because this is just supposed to be a fast stash busting type of project. So I didn't do it, and when I finished, I thought I will sew the edge back in on itself to try to get it to not roll. And that didn't work. So in case you think you can do that, you can't. And even right after steaming the ends and everything, it's still rolling in. But the girls don't notice, luckily. So I definitely got away with that one. So yes, not much else to say about these, but I'm just loving my knitting machine for the stash busting capabilities it has. So is that really it? Okay, before I get into sewing, I want to talk about one project that I'm really, really excited about that I'm going to be knitting after I finish my Agnes Colorwork. So what I'm planning to make is in Swedish, so I'm just going to put that on the screen. Something like Trojan something something. I'm so sorry, I can't say it. But it's by the designer named Anna Bauer. And this is a very underrated project. It only has 4 projects listed on Ravelry. And I found it because, you know, the person whose ideas I'm copying from my Agnes Colorwork? Well, I went and saw all of her projects because she is absolutely amazing. And she made a version of this sweater that is to die for. It would make the perfect Christmas sweater. So I'll put a picture of it on the screen and just look at this color combination. It's very, very me, pink and green. And it's gonna fit in very well with my lifestyle. So I'm going to pretty much copy every yarn that she used for this pattern, which I believe is a top-down yoke pattern. Like I said, it's in Swedish, so I'm gonna have to translate that with Google's help. But I think it's gonna be well worth it. And one thing I love about this pattern is that there are some interesting pearl bump textures in the color work. So that's definitely something I'm interested in trying, and I think the effect just looks so amazing on those little bell shapes there. So anyways, back to the yarn. For the background color, she used Jarbo Svensk Ull 3-ply, and this is cool because I made a free Jarbo pattern I finished like last month, my husband's sweater, so it's nice to get to try their yarn. And this is pretty easily accessible if you live in the US. It's from the website Linda Hobby, and you can get a lot of European rustic woolly wool non-superwash yarns from their website, like Jarbo and Sadnesgarn and tons of stuff. You can check out their website if you want. Anyways, this beautiful green color is called Bauer Forest. And something about that name also just really speaks to me and just adds to the whole experience of this yarn. This is definitely a rustic, hard-wearing yarn, I think. It feels a lot like the Norwegian rustic wools that I'm used to working with, like Hedgehog Ask or Rama Fino. This is, it says a 3-ply, so it feels kind of like a DK weight to me. And this is a 100-gram skein. It was about 10 bucks, I think. 9 or 10, I can't remember now. And there's 180 meters in this skein. It suggests you use a 5mm needle, but I think for the pattern I'm going to be using, I think it said 4 or 4.5, so maybe a little bit tighter gauge. I haven't made a gauge swatch or anything yet. I'm making myself wait until I finish the Agnes Kofte. I don't want 2 giant sweater whips going on at the same time. So that's going to be the background color. Got a couple skeins of that. And then the lighter color is very interesting. It's kind of a light gray. Let me try to find the color before I start talking about it. Oh no, it's not, the color is not on here in English. It had a really cool name though, so I'm gonna have to look it up. Ha, okay, got it. This one is called April Sun. On camera it looks kind of gray, but in real life it's a very light gray with a green undertone. So I thought that is going to be a really cool highlight color. I would have never been able to choose such a contrast color on my own. I would just choose white. I would never think to do an interesting color like this. So I think just 1 skein of that is all we need. And then there's a pink and a red. The red, I'm going to use the Agnes Colorwork Pure Gint. I have that, sorry, I have that shade on my stocking. It's just a very pure, very, very bright red. I think for her pattern, she didn't use red. She used like a hot pink fuchsia kind of color, but I wasn't able to find that. It was not a Svensk wool. It was some other brand. I decided to go with red. And then for the pink, I got Agnes Colorwork, I don't know, just a light pink shade. So yes, right here, this is my happy place in terms of color combinations. And I can't wait to see how that turns out. Just wanted to mention it really quick in case maybe you're looking to make a Christmas sweater of your own and you want to try a pattern that you've never seen before. Just wanted to mention that. Also because I'm just so excited, I wanted to share it with you. Another thing that's on my to-do list that I'll probably start pretty soon is a pair of sailboat mittens for my husband. He said he would like some mittens, and I love making mittens now. I've only made 1 pair, but I already love it. And I'm going to be making this pattern that I found on Etsy, and I'm going to be using Rama Fino. I think maybe I will do it in a dark olive green and white, or black and white traditional colors. I'm not sure yet. I'm gonna see what I have in my stash. I think I have black and green, so I'll be able to do whatever. Or I could do gold and white, and that would kind of match his hat. But I don't have gold in a thin enough yarn, because this is gonna be, you need a fingering weight yarn and 3mm needles. And the gold yarn I have right now is Aran or worsted weight, so that's not gonna work. So those are my knitting plans, and now let's get into the sewing. So I really got the sewing bug this past month. I think it's because with the changing seasons, I realized that I wanted some fall and winter dresses to go in my wardrobe, and especially to pair with some of the new knitwear that I've made recently. This first dress though doesn't really go with knitwear. I mean, it of course can, but I didn't specifically make it to go with a particular sweater like I did my next 2 dresses that I'll be showing you. I made this one purely because I wanted a medium length sleeved floral green dress. I had a specific pattern in mind and a specific fabric in mind as well. So there's another YouTube channel that I will mention called Rosary Apparel, and she has her own sewing patterns, but she also sews all sorts of other sewing patterns that are popular. And she made a Clara dress in a beautiful gingham fabric, and this is the perfect cottagecore type of dress pattern that I like to make. So I decided I would like to try making one myself, and I made it in this beautiful lightweight cotton. It's a very dark green, and there's some little flowers on here that are pale bluish white and little pops of pink, and pink and green, as you know, is my favorite color combination. And I just thought this would be the most beautiful dress for fall and winter, and maybe even, yeah, spring. Why not? You can wear it whenever you want. And this is a super easy pattern if you're new to sewing. If you're very new to sewing, I recommend making a t-shirt or something, but if you want to try making a dress with elastic channels, this is a great place to start, I think. What I did was I made 2 back panels. There's a front panel and a back panel. And Rosary Apparel, wait, what's her name? Janelle, sorry. She made her dress with 2 back panels because she liked the deeper scoop of the back. And I thought I would probably like that as well. So I also made 2 back panels and just didn't make any front panels at all. And the sleeves are giant, and I think in the original pattern there's just 1 set of elastic, but I like the look of 2, so I put 2 there. 1 really close to the edge. I don't like too much frill poking out. That's a little too, I don't know, I just wasn't in the mood for that for whatever reason. And once you attach the sleeve, you take both the sleeves, sorry, you take 1 giant elastic and you thread it through the neckline of the front, the left sleeve, the back, and the right sleeve. So there's just 1 giant elastic going in here. So that's pretty adjustable. You can make it as loose or as tight fitting as you want. Of course, if the elastic's shorter, then you're gonna have a higher neckline and the sleeve's gonna sit up higher on the shoulder too. So I just love how adjustable and customizable elastic dresses are, of course, and they'll fit no matter if you gain a little bit of weight, lose a little bit of weight, if you're sick over the winter. So yeah, I can't say enough about elastic dresses. And then for the waistline, there are 2 rows here, 1 right under the bust and then 1 at the high natural waist point. And since they're pretty close together, it almost has a sheared effect without having to actually do shearing. And for this first elastic channel, I made it 1 centimeter lower than what the pattern suggests because I normally need a little bit more room between the neckline and the bust and the whole thing. I need a little bit more room there. And I'm happy I made that change. I think if I make this again, I would even lower it an extra centimeter. And also I was thinking how I'd love to make this dress again, but just have shearing here instead of elastic. I think that would look pretty cool as well. Probably look almost exactly the same, but I do love shearing. And another nice thing about this pattern, comes with pockets, nice big ones, so you can put whatever you want in there. And this is almost a maxi length. It's pretty long. I made this to be a nice winter dress. I wanted it to be pretty long, and it's lightweight, so more fabric at the bottom is no problem. And that's just the dress length that I've been liking lately. It looks good with flats or heels, and I think it's just a flattering length to have a little bit of your ankle exposed there. So that's pretty much it about this dress. The instructions were very clear, maybe beginner, intermediate friendly. And I'll definitely be making this again, I think. For my next sewing pattern, I actually purchased Rosary Apparel's Pansy Dress pattern. I've been watching her YouTube channel for years and I'd never bought any of her patterns, so I decided, since she has so many Pansy Dress hack videos on her website, I thought once you buy the pattern, she's got so many different ways to hack the pattern into multiple different dresses. So I thought that's a great investment. You get many dress patterns for the price of 1, and also I wanted to support her channel because I've been watching her for years and she's really helped me learn how to sew. I taught myself to sew maybe 3 years ago, and I would say I'm pretty good at sewing now, and she was definitely part of my learning process. Anyways, so I showed this fabric a few episodes ago. This is a 100% cotton fabric that I got from Fabric Wholesale Direct. It's only like $4.99 a yard or so, so very affordable, very nice lightweight cotton. even though it's for winter, I like to get lightweight fabrics because then I can wear them in the summer too. And in winter, I'm gonna have to be layering anyways, so a light dress is not really going to be too cold for me ever. So this is the Pansy dress, and I followed her video called, her pattern hacking video called Pinafore something something. So it's how to make her Pansy dress into a pinafore. So what you do is you take the pattern and you make a deeper neckline and a deeper sleeve length. And actually this turned out a little too big on me. I made the size 12. By the way, the pattern only goes up to a size 14, so it's very not good for size inclusivity. Just want to throw that out there. And I made the size 12. I probably could have made the 10 because it's pretty much too big in the front neck. I could probably pinch out a whole inch at the center front and the center back. And then the pit is very loose as well. I could probably take in at least an inch here. But a pinafore is kind of meant to be oversized. You can throw it over a sweater or whatever. And it's a very simple bodice. I didn't even line it, so didn't use much fabric. And then the skirt part is just a very simple gathered skirt. And in her video, she suggested making these little ties so you can cinch in the waist, because it's a very oversized, loose, baggy, throw over kind of style. So once you do have it on your body, maybe you want to cinch it in a little bit at your waist, and these ties definitely help you to do so. And yep, I put pockets in this as well, of course, gotta do that. And I specifically bought this fabric to go with my Kate Davies Circunet sweater. So this exact outfit Kate Davies was wearing in her Circunet pictures. I'll pop it up on screen. And I think I totally achieved that look, and I'm really, really pleased with how this turned out. The gray pairs really nicely with black and white. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Okay, the last thing I will be talking about today is another sewing project. This one you might have seen before because it was originally a sheared dress with no sleeves. And it's the Vicky Sews Clarissa Dress. And something about it just wasn't quite right. I think it was because the pattern was meant to have sleeves. So if you just put a strap here, something about it, it was not fully stretched out enough around here, because when you add a sleeve, I know this is not making sense, but once I added the sleeve, it seems like the whole thing was able to fully stretch out and lay correctly, if that makes sense. So I went back to the Clarissa Dress pattern and just, luckily I had enough fabric to cut out the sleeves for this, and I sewed it together, and I really love how this looks now with the sleeves. And this is such a lightweight linen that I can still wear this in summer with sleeves and it'll be totally fine. This is a Merchant & Mills linen. It's called Salmon, and it's a beautiful beige and white pattern, a little bit understated, not too bold, but definitely a cutesy cottagecore type of fabric. And for the sleeves, I made the original sleeves maybe end about here, and I made them full-length sleeves, and I decided to do something crazy and shear them all the way up here for a really long cuff. I just had this idea and I thought it could be cool, basically. And I have a really good shearing technique, so this didn't take too long at all. I basically just sheared the sleeve in the round without cutting the thread ever, until I ran out of thread, elastic thread in the bobbin. Sometimes when you learn how to shear, they tell you to cut every row, but that is kind of a nightmare because and then hand knot it at the end, and that is just so painstaking, and it's very prone to mistakes. When I do it, at least, the elastic always ends up coming undone. And yeah, just going around and around is so much easier, and the effect is the same and takes a lot less time, and no problems, no mistakes. One thing is, I think this sleeve is just too huge. I've made this pattern twice before, and I don't remember the sleeve looking quite so comically large. So I think what I'm gonna do is take the sleeve in at the underside seam and just delete the width by maybe a third and then kind of taper it off into the cuff. So this is like the third iteration of this dress and I'm about to make a fourth, but this fabric is so special and beautiful that I really want to get it right. And the potential is there, like I can see how I want it to look and I just need to make it so. This dress is a lot like the other dresses I've made. Elasticated waist, pockets, maxi length. I've showed this in a previous podcast without sleeves if you want to go take a look at that, but it's a very simple pattern. The instructions are not good, I'll be honest. There are pictures, but the pictures are confusing. They're a little too zoomed in, you can't tell what's going on. And then, yeah, I've made this 3 times and I'm still find myself confused at the sleeve part. I ended up getting it right, but just know that it's a little bit tricky in the sleeve section. You might want to pin things together and see how they line up before you permanently sew anything together. I don't know what other advice I can give you other than maybe you're not crazy, or maybe it's just me, but maybe it's not just me and it is confusing. One thing I do like about the sleeve is that it has its very own elastic, so it sits on your shoulder nice and snugly. I'm about to run out of battery, so I'll just say thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe and support my channel if you like the video and would like to see more. And also give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and leave a comment about where you're from and what you're currently knitting on, or what are you planning to make for the upcoming holiday season. So thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you here again next time. Have a great weekend. Bye!